About a week and a half or so into the World Cup now. Plenty of great matches so far, and over the course of this week, we'll start to get into some more of the group stage matches that start to have some implications in terms of whether or not teams will be moving on to the knockout round, or whether or not they'll be packing up after their third group stage game. The U.S. men's national team getting an excellent victory in their second group stage match against Australia this past Friday, winning 2-0. And I have a number of thoughts on that match, which I want to get to. But first, I just want to take a look at some of the matches from this past week. So on Monday, you had Belgium tying Egypt, which I think everyone sort of saw as a bit of a surprising result. I think most people expected Belgium to defeat Egypt, but because Belgium tied Egypt, that left them, in a weaker position in the group. I believe tied across the board with all the members of that group at that point. And then when Belgium went on to, I believe, tie again, yes, they tied Iran yesterday. Well, that leaves Belgium in an exceptionally weak position in the group now, having tied Egypt in their initial game and then tied Iran yesterday. Look at Belgium, who I think many would expect to win this group. They're now in third with only a game to go, right? Obviously, in this group, France, Norway, Iraq, and Senegal, that group. France versus Norway is going to be the great game. Unfortunately, the group may be clinched and over with by the time they play, because I believe they both play today against, they swap opponents. Norway will be playing Senegal and France will be playing Iraq. And they may indeed both get a victory in those games, which will make them the undoubted, first and second place finishers in those groups. So the third game that they play against each other won't have much meaning, which would kind of stink. Take the juice out of that one. Holland versus Mbappe. Wednesday, you had Portugal in their notable tie against Dr. Congo. Obviously, most people would, expect Portugal with their extremely talented team to defeat a team like Congo. Congo able to pull out the draw. That's just the nature of the World Cup. Teams are going to perform over their heads, with all the just energy of the moment and the sort of the lift and spirit that they get from the fans traveling and showing their support. And obviously a huge pressure placed on the nations that actually have high expectations that can take its toll. Portugal dealing with this issue where Ronaldo's very old and looking rather stiff, and indeed in the game against Congo did not look that great. Looked somewhat stiff. Oh, let me get myself out of the way here as I talk about these games. You can see what I'm pointing to. Sorry about that. But anyways, Portugal needing to figure that out for before their game, which I believe their next game is maybe today, and we'll take a look at that here in a second. England looking dominant against Croatia. Harry Kane putting up 2 goals, a penalty kick, and also a nice header goal on a cross. England, was in firm possession of the game from start to finish. Looked notably more skilled and faster than Croatia. So England has certainly announced themselves as a formidable contender in this tournament. Ghana defeating Panama 1-0. So England will face Ghana today, and they can be a pesky opponent, typically stronger than you might expect. A very good African footballing nation, so that'll be an interesting game, England versus Ghana. I'm not sure if that's today or tomorrow. Canada notably defeating Qatar 6-0. These 6-0 defeats for teams like Qatar, these are tough because Qatar is obviously a team that's going to be hoping to advance to the knockout stage with a third place finisher slot. But the problem is most of those third place finishers are going to have similar point totals at the end of the 3 matches. So what it's going to go to is goal differential, and if you have a -6 goal differential in one of your games, it's going to hurt your goal differential, which may end up being the deciding factor. So those results are really tough. On the other side of it, Canada looked outstanding on Thursday. Looked very sound on the attack, easily sort of maneuvering around Qatar's defenders, and their young striker John David had a great game with 2 goals. Obviously, Mexico defeating Korea Republic 1-0 and clinching their spot in the knockout stage. USA defeating Australia 2-0, which we'll talk about in a moment. Brazil looking somewhat shaky against Haiti despite beating them 3-0. They only had, I think maybe it was like 7, 8, 10 shots. And Haiti acquitting themselves well despite being out of the tournament now, technically, having lost to Scotland and Brazil. Brazil only winning this game 3-0 certainly did not do anything to clear up the question marks around Brazil and their actual form and strength in this tournament. Turkey falling to Paraguay that same day. Paraguay keeping themselves alive with that victory, and Turkey indeed eliminating themselves despite still having one game left that they have to play. But having it not mean anything for them, having already lost twice, they will indeed be going home after the third match. Germany squeaking out the victory against Ivory Coast after winning 7-1 in their first game against Curacao. They were tied with Ivory Coast up until like the 92nd, 93rd minute maybe. And a young striker named Undav was able to collect a pass around the 18 and just fire one past the Ivory Coast goaltender to give them the 2-1 victory right at the end, which is a great win for them, and I believe they clinched their place in the next round with 2 victories. Spain finally sort of flashing their form against Saudi Arabia, winning 4-0. Lamine Yamal getting a goal in that game. I believe there was another player, I can't remember his name, Oyen something, Spanish striker, or maybe a midfielder, but he had 2 goals and looked outstanding. And also I believe he assisted the Lamine Yamal goal. So Spain looking like the fierce contender that we sort of expected them to be, defeating Saudi Arabia 4-0. Okay, so if we take a look at the United States versus Australia game, this was obviously a really fun game. You know, if you're a United States men's national team fan, due to the fact that this was our game where we had a chance to clinch the group and clinch our position in the knockout round, having defeated Paraguay 4-1 in the opener. And I was extremely pleased with his performance against Australia. I felt like we showed that we were in firm possession of the game for 60-70% of the game. There were a few moments in the second half when Australia was able to, when they subbed in their hot attacker there, Aaron Kunda, and they were able to get on the front foot a little bit there for a couple of chances. And I believe right in the beginning of the game as well they had a chance, but for the most part the chances for Australia were fleeting and they were frequent for the United States, right? We were very much in possession of the ball for most of the game, and we have the stats right here. So in terms of possession, we had 55% and Australia only had 30%. So again, I was very happy with his performance in the United States. I felt like we could have probably won maybe 3 or 4-0 had we just been able to convert on a couple more of our chances, obviously. But Australia went with a defensive first strategy, which in the end I think was their undoing, but may have been the reason that they didn't lose 3-4-5-0, right? Again, in my opinion, I think the defensive strategy was the wrong call, just given that the United States had shown in the first match that they were a very sound attacking team, and that they had a very dangerous striker. And when you have pieces like that, and not just a dangerous striker, but a number of dangerous pieces, I think Australia was thinking, well, Pulisic is out, we can just pack it in, their offense won't be as strong, and we can just maybe squeak out a tie or possibly get like a counterattack goal and win. I don't think Australia was expecting to have their defense so thoroughly outmatched by a number of our players up in the front with Pulisic out, right? I think they thoroughly underestimated the rest of the players on the team in terms of their ability to create chances and still be extremely dangerous up front, you know, even with Pulisic not in the game. And, you know, that was a gamble that they took, and ultimately they paid for it, because it was just, you know, a matter of time until we scored. You can do the pack it in strategy. You can sort of go defense first, maybe like at the end of the game with 10 or 20 minutes left when you have a lead you didn't expect to get. You can do that then, and it can sometimes work. You can survive for 10 or 20 minutes. Anything after 10 or 20 minutes, it's a huge, you know, the risk level just goes through the roof, because eventually the offense starts to learn how to untie your defense a little bit and create more frequent chances. And the more chances that the offense creates, obviously one of them is bound to go in eventually, right? Because as defense, you're always playing reactive. The offense can be on the front. The offense has the initiative. They have the impetus. They're on the front foot. They're being proactive. And that's always going to, at the end of the day, over the long haul, is going to yield more success than trying to be reactive, right? So committing to a reactive first strategy on Australia's side, I think strategically was just the wrong move. Pochettino stuck with his attack first strategy despite not having Pulisic, and I think he won the strategy battle against the Australians manager. I believe his name was Popovich or something like that. Now, as far as the own goal goes, I have a number of thoughts on this. First of all, this own goal was so frustratingly stupid on the part of Australia's player, and I'm a United States fan, so I loved it, obviously, and I was extremely excited to see that ball go by the keeper. I just do not understand how you make that mistake as the Australian defender. If you go back and watch it, and I wish we could, but if we do, it'll end up getting my video copyright stricken and taken down, so can't do that. But if you go back and watch the highlight of that own goal, it's so confusing as to how he can make that mistake. Like, he just needs to quickly set his feet and like jump over the ball, or just basically do anything besides touch the ball. What he does is he almost appears to try to kick the ball, and it's like he didn't realize the goal was right in front of him, but the goal couldn't be bigger right in front of him. So how would that even be possible? It makes zero sense how you can have that brain fart in that moment, and just the way he did it, so sort of robotically, just making this really stupid mistake. If I'm a fan of the Australian Socceroos or whatever whatever they call them, I would be so upset with this guy, and it would almost be unforgivable. It's just, there's certain mistakes you can understand people making in big spots. This one was so incredibly stupid. The way it almost appeared like he meant to do it. And if someone told me like FanDuel had him on the payroll, this is the funny part. If you're a conspiracy theorist that thinks the United States is getting they're getting grooved through this tournament in order to make it to a deep round and to juice the TV ratings and to increase attendance, given that they're one of the host nations, you have a ton of ammo, given the fact that like both of our games have started as the United States being the beneficiary of an own goal by the other team, right? Neither one of them is really forgivable at all. Like, it's not like they don't. I mean, they're both inadvertent, obviously, but they are both just incredibly boneheaded plays. The way the player was not able to just do anything besides smack the ball the way an offensive player would right into the net. It's just unthinkable to have done that in a World Cup. You almost feel sorry for those players because they'll never live that down. But I just looked up quickly if the United States was the first team in history to be the beneficiary of an own goal in their first group stage matches of a World Cup, and indeed they are. So again, if you're a conspiracy theorist, and that's from Perplexity, I just assume that's correct. If you're a conspiracy theorist that thinks they're being grooved through the tournament for the purpose of TV ratings and juicing attendance and whatnot, you definitely have ammo with that fact, right? That our first two group stage games started each with an own goal, giving us a 1-0 lead. Like, it's so big in soccer to just get one goal. Like, think how many games are just 1-0 or 1-1 or 0-0, right? It's getting that one goal is huge. Sometimes it's all you get in a game. So it's just amazing to me that that mistake was made twice, and we were the beneficiaries of it both times. Another notable thing about this game was the yellow cards. Australia obviously struggling with 4. We did have 3 ourselves, but Australia's 4 were all on their defense. And this just showed you how much they were this just shows you how outclassed they were sort of by our attackers. They were really forced to get very physical and sort of revert to physicality rather than sort of technique. And, they paid the price in yellow cards. So in the third group stage match, in which they're now on a win and a loss, so the third group stage match should have some implications for Australia. Yes, it will, because Paraguay lost to us and then beat Turkey. So Australia will play Paraguay in the third group stage match, and that will decide the second place finisher of the group, and the person who gets the guaranteed spot as the second place finisher, gets the guaranteed spot in the knockout round. So these yellow cards, could be a factor in Australia's match against Paraguay, because these players have to play more carefully. If they get a yellow card and then end up moving on as the second place finisher, or even one of the third place finishers, they could end up being down a defender or two if those defenders end up getting yellow cards in this game, right? So that's that can end up hurting them. But again, that just shows you the pressure that this Australian defense was feeling. Every single one of them got a yellow card outside of the one guy that had, this was obviously the most, or was most extremely apparent, was this guy Cameron Burgess that had the own goal. It just looked like the United States attack just had an extra step of pace on the Australian defenders. So on our side, we did have 3 yellow cards: Richards, Robinson, and Balogun. This shouldn't really matter, given that the yellow card totals will reset after the group stage, and this final group stage game doesn't matter. So these players should be smart enough to not get a yellow card in a game that doesn't have consequences, right? So I don't think these yellow cards are something to worry about all that much. Pepe was the one that played instead of Pulisic in this dual attacker formation thing that we ran, the 3-5-2. And I thought he did great. I thought he did well. He acquitted himself well, and then he was subbed in for Bearhalter late in the game, and Bearhalter has done a nice job coming off the bench and providing some energy. I thought Weston McKennie was, very key in the in the midfield and especially on the attacking side, creating chances, drawing defenders to him, and then dumping it off. He had one dump off there on the right side where he dumped it off to Dest going into the 18, and Dest had a rocket that went right off a defender's chest, but it was an excellent little play there. It's the type of movement and possession play, or sort of movement and precise attacking moves, quick actions that you want to see in the box from like a skilled attacking team, right? So that was really encouraging. McKennie's been great. He's been, again, he's been one of those names you think of when you think that this team has more than just Pulisic, right? More than just Balogun. We have a number of these guys that are really impressive players: Richards and Dest and McKennie. Even Freeman was all over the place this game, having that goal as well. So that was really great. Freeze in goal hasn't really been tested all that much. I think he may have had his first official save in the Australia game. I could be wrong about that, though. I think I heard that. But he's been mistake-free, right? He's been steady and mistake-free, and that's all we really need from him. There will come a game where he gets tested, right? There will come a game where we have to play a team with a real striker that's going to put some pressure on him and test him in different ways. And that's when we'll really find out what he's worth. You just wonder if maybe when the pressure gets turned up a little bit on Freeze, that he could be sort of the weak link of this team that hasn't reared its ugly head yet, that we haven't really had to see yet. But that may be something we have to deal with, right? And you just hope we don't end up having to deal with it in the middle of a knockout stage game, that when we're down, or let's hope he gets tested a little bit in a game where our offense has performed well in the first half, right? And then maybe they turn it on in the second half and he has to kind of hold a lead. That would be the best way for him to get some experience in a more high pressure situation. So the other thing that I've been thinking about was, given the fact that we clinched, we won our group and just in our first 2 group stage games, and clinched our spot in the knockout stage round of 32. I was just thinking about, who our opponent might be in that round of 32 game, and then just sort of thinking about some paths through the knockout rounds if we're able to win, some opponents that we could potentially see. And so what I did was I jumped on Claude AI, and I just had Claude build me sort of an interactive bracket that would show me sort of all the potential matches, or all the matches that are going to happen, and then as the groups round out and the results come in on the group stage, it would sort of automatically fill in these knockout stage matches. But it's cool. So as the results come in from the group stages, it'll just sort of like automatically update for me. And the 3 teams that have already clinched, USA, Mexico, and Germany, are in there, and it just helps. It helps you organize the bracket. And I believe there is a bracket available from FIFA as well. But just looking at it, I found it a bit. I didn't like it personally, and I just wanted to see if Claude could maybe make me a better one. And so, it's for example, on June 29th in Boston, in match 74 of the tournament. In the round of 32, Germany will be playing the 3rd place finisher of groups A, B, C, D, or F. In match 79 on June 30th in Mexico City, Mexico will be playing the 3rd place finisher of groups C, E, F, H, or I. That's yet undetermined. And in match 81 in the round of 32 in Kansas City on July 1st, the United States will be playing the third place finisher of groups B, E, F, I, or J. So if I just make a little side by side here, I'll put my bracket there, I'll grab the standings here, and we can just take a look at like what this might look like. So again, USA will be playing in the round of 32 in Kansas City on July 1st. They'll be playing the third place finisher of groups B, E, F, I, or J. So right now, we will be playing Bosnia and Herzegovina. Assuming that was a third place finisher that was allowed through, right? Now, again, it's going to be... Now, if the Group B does not supply a third place finisher because they aren't one of the top 8 out of the 12, then it would be Group E would be the next option. So you'd have something like an Ecuador, or a Sweden, or a Senegal, or a Jordan, right? And again, it's going to be determined after the final group stage match what the top 8 third place finishers are. But you look at something like goal differential, given that a lot of these third place finishers, they're going to end up being tied in points. So what it's going to end up coming down to is their goal differential, right? And I believe I mentioned this, but so teams like Qatar, right, that have like in Group B, Qatar, that has a -6 goal differential because they suffered that terrible loss to Canada 6-0. That's going to end up hurting you if you end up in a third place position, right? And you have hopes to get to the knockout stage via the best third place finisher route. Team like a Paraguay probably is a little safer, given that their goal differential is only -2, right? Like Curacao having that 7-1 defeat to Germany. That's going to hurt them if they're in any sort of position to be one of the top 8 third place finishers. So it's going to be things like that to determine it. But if you're the USA, you're looking at a team like right now, like a Bosnia, like an Ecuador, like a Sweden, like a Senegal or a Jordan. So, if we end up in the round of 32, it looks like we'll be playing a team that's similar to what we've beaten so far, right? Now, the opponent might be a little bit of a step up, and given that it's a knockout stage, that you may get a little bit of extra energy from them, but at least at this point, it looks like a round of 32 game. We should have the expectation to defeat that opponent in the round of 32. Not easily, because no game in the World Cup, especially in the knockout stage, should ever consider easy or expect to be easy. But it definitely appears like the opponent is not going to be anything that's drastically different from what we've seen so far, at least in the round of 32. Now, if you're looking at the round of 16, if we're to win this match, our round of 16 opponent would come from this match right here, which is the first place finisher of Group G against the third place finisher of Group A, E, H, I, or J. So if we look at Group G over here, the first place finisher right at this moment would be Egypt through 2 games. Right at the moment, it's looking like our opponent will be the winner, the first place finisher of the Group G, assuming they are able to defeat the third place finisher of A, E, H, I, or J, which if we just take a look here, so it would rely on Egypt defeating a team like a Czechia, a Korea Republic, or a South Africa, who are all fairly similar at this point. Their goal differentials aren't bad. Yeah, so you could, right at this moment, it looks like in the round of 16 in Seattle on July 7th, assuming we win a round of 32 match, you could be seeing Egypt. Now that's still subject to change. If Egypt unexpectedly loses, that opens up that group a little bit more in terms of who would be the first place finisher of Group G. But right now, at least, it tentatively looks like we could be seeing Egypt in the round of 16, assuming those teams sort of continue to win and continue to be in the form that they've shown so far. So if Spain were to sort of perform how you expect them to perform, that would be the big team that we would see in Seattle in the quarterfinal. It would be Lamine Yamal in Spain in match 100 on July 12th in Seattle. If they were to win through to the quarterfinals, and we were to as well, we would see Spain. So we would play Spain in the quarterfinal in Dallas on July 12th. If we were to make it that far, and they were to win through as well, as sort of you would expect them to do, which would just be epic. The one that I was that I was a little disappointed by, was the fact that England is in Group L, which you'll notice is on the complete opposite side of the bracket from us. England here in Group L. So if they're the first place finisher in Group L, which at this point it looks like they will be, although they've only played 1 game, then we will not be able to see them until the final. unfortunately. So because they're on the complete other side of the group here, if England wins through to the final and we win through to the final, that would be the only way that we could face England in the knockout stage, which is a little bit disappointing because that's the team that I personally kind of would consider to be our arch rival and I would want to see. Now, if they were to finish as the second place finishers in Group L, which is still a possibility, then you're looking at a greater possibility. They would have to potentially beat Spain, and then we could see England in the quarterfinal in Seattle on July 12th. But that would rely on England finishing as the second place finisher in Group L, Spain finishing as the first place finisher in Group H, and England beating Spain in the round of 16. United States team, next match against Turkey. Again, this match does not have any implications. Turkey already eliminated. United States already through to the next round. That is in LA Stadium on the 25th of June, so 3 days from now on Thursday, and that will be at 10 p.m. Which that really stinks for those fans that bought tickets to that game, right? They probably expected this game to be extremely important in terms of deciding the group or something like that. And also it's in LA. Turns out it has zero implications and you may not even get to see like the biggest stars or whatever, right? And Turkey certainly doesn't care. They're already out of the group. So definitely sucks for those people that paid big money for those tickets that are now, the value on them has been drastically decreased by there just being no stakes attached to this game. So I think it's been an awesome World Cup so far. I've been really impressed with all the, how entertaining and exciting it's been. I feel like the level of play has been really high. The Fox broadcasts have been all right. Most of the announcers have been pretty good. I feel like the intermittent coverage, the intermission coverage, it's a little bit lacking. It's funny because you expect, Zlatan is supposed to be this really entertaining guy, but his commentary is just really, it's quite boring. And the same with Thierry Henry. It's just, they just don't give very interesting commentary during those intermission periods, despite being interesting guys. They're obviously, former stars in the game, but I just feel like they're lacking in terms of being entertaining on television. Rebecca Lowe does a great job being the host and whatever, and I feel like Alexi Lalas is, he's always been whatever. He's somewhat entertaining, certainly not some big star in terms of a sports media figure, but he's all right. He can't carry a show though, and he's kind of being expected to with just how flat Henry and Zlatan are. I feel like the actual coverage of the games though has been pretty good. The announcers again have been fine. They haven't been annoying. I felt like met the moment in terms of covering the goals and not being overbearing and giving good commentary, including the color guys giving good information. So I feel like in that respect they got it right in terms of selecting the right commentary crews. The refs have been surprisingly liberal with their how they're allowing these players to play. It's been very physical and there's been a lot of contact allowed, I guess is what I'm saying. At least in my opinion, from what I've watched in soccer, there's a lot of plays that have happened where I certainly expect the ref to blow his whistle, and in most cases he's just not. He's just allowing them to play. So I appreciate that. The refs are not falling for the diving and for the acting and the theatrics the way I feel like they do in the European professional leagues that can sometimes turn the American eyes off somewhat. So I think that's a really good thing. I like the way they're reffing these games. Now, some of the rules that they have in FIFA just completely baffle me. And I know, soccer fans and, European soccer purists, they would disagree with me, but you will never convince me that doing the counting up method where you start at 0 and the half ends at 45 and then you go to 90, that there's any reason to do that anymore. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add any flow to the game. It doesn't keep the game flowing in a certain way. It's like just divide, and people complaining about the hydration breaks, it makes absolutely no difference. It does. I shouldn't say that. It does make a difference in the sense that the coach has more involvement now, that he can make an adjustment in that quarterly intermission or whatever you'd say, if that's what you want to call it. That is a difference. I'm not saying that it's not. It doesn't change. It's still an entertaining game, and a team having a chance to change their strategy, if that helps them come back, then it's fine. It's not such a drastic change that it's really screwing with anything in such a way that's that offensive. It's only soccer purists that notice that. It's in my opinion, increasing the entertainment value in the sense that if even the players are just more fresh at the end of the game because they've gotten an extra break, but also just that they can, the coaches can better organize and prepare the players for what's going on. So that's going to give you a better product at the end of the day. It's going to give you a more organized, more prepared product. So, to an extent, I have no problem with added breaks in a soccer match. And again, you're never going to convince me that there's any reason to count up instead of down. It's just confusing. Adding the time on at the end, and I know I sound so, just utterly American saying this, but it's so stupid adding the time on at the end. Imagine if the NBA Finals, when the buzzer sounded and the Knicks, the Knicks won the NBA Finals. Imagine if they were like, oh, by the way, we're adding 6 minutes on, right? We're giving the Spurs 6 more minutes. It just makes no sense. Betting wise, it's so stupid. You place a bet, and it gets to 90 minutes and you don't think you've won, but then you find out you have to wait another 8 minutes, and they always score and they always foil your bet in the after in the extra time, the extra minutes that the refs added. Anyways, you get what I'm saying. The rules are utterly ridiculous in FIFA, but I do think the refs have done a good job in terms of letting the players play and establishing the right flow to the game and not falling for the diving. So. It's been great so far. I expect this week of matches will be excellent. There's, as the matches start to take on some more implications in terms of moving on and earning a spot in the knockout stage. So certainly be glued to the rest of it, and we'll try to jump on for another update and share some more thoughts within a week or so as more of these matches unfold. So certainly appreciate anyone watching, and we'll see you next time.